We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Aziz is absent. Councilor Boland?
Here.
Councilor Furlow?
Here.
Councilor Frizzle?
Here.
Councilor Rees-Camp?
Here.
Councilor Stouter?
Here.
Councilor Steinheibel?
Here.
All right, first up we have the consent calendar. Now, the following items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items unless the councilor so requests. In this case, the items will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Tonight we have the agenda from November 13th, 2019, Planning Commission appointment of John Port, Library Advisory Committee from May 14th, Planning Commission minutes from September 18th, Senior and Disabled Services Advisory Committee from July 24th, the September 25th work session and October 9th regular session minutes of City Council, and an internal policy, City of Lebanon Public Records Policy.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval. Any comments? Motion carries. Suppose we need a vote, huh? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good job.
Motion carries. And we have a proclamation for Traffic Safety Month. Whereas the City of Lebanon recognizes traffic safety as a vital concern for our community, and whereas in Oregon, speeding is the #1 contributor to death and injury in traffic crashes, and whereas in an effort to reduce speeding, police officers are out on the roads with new technology that helps pinpoint cars that are going too fast and they're ticketing drivers, and whereas speed monitoring radar trailers are being used that alert drivers of their speed and promote compliance with the speed limit, and whereas Lebanon Police will be conducting specialized patrols focusing attention on pedestrian crosswalk safety, drunk drivers, speeders, and cell phone violators. Now, therefore, I, Jason Boland, Council President of the City of Lebanon, do hereby proclaim November as Traffic Safety Month and encourage all citizens to drive safely and follow posted speed limits. All right. Public comments. Citizens may address the council by filling out a testimony comment card prior to speaking and hand it to the city clerk. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comments to the council. The council may take an additional 2 minutes to respond. The city clerk will accept and distribute written comments at a speaker's request. And we have 3 cards to start with, and then others can join in. So Joe Knight.
My name is Joe Knight. I live at 1173 West Sherman Street. I came to the last council meeting out of frustration with dealing with the permit office. Never had I been here before, and I was unaware and ill-prepared for the rules to speak. The intimidating lights telling me my 5 minutes was running out. As I tried to figure out what to say under the pressure, I knew I was going poorly. I then found out 3 days later that it was on YouTube, and it was bad as I thought, but what was worse was the conversation after I left. I was here because the customer service was an epic failure on my first trip to the permit office. I left with 2 pieces of paper, pages 1 and 2 in that pamphlet I handed out. And the belief that I could build 20 feet from the driveway, 15 feet from the sidewalk, and 5 feet from my fence. I was not aware my property line was the yellow line in the photo, and I based life financial choices on that info and moved forward. After getting the money together to proceed, I hired a builder, and I paid for engineering, and ordered materials only to find out that my plans were not as I was to believe. After many trips to the permit office and getting nowhere, I reached out to my city council member and was told Tammy's boss would call and talk to me. This did not happen. I was at the office and finally met Kelly, and we had a conversation about the building, and I thought we had worked it all out till 4 days later I got the call and that the building and awning that was put forth by Kelly I could build but not park under. And I needed to build 2 buildings at both ends of my property. When I brought up that 4 blocks down the street was a house like mine with parking where I would be parking, I was told to prove that they had a permit. Page 6 shows pics and emails about this, which to this day only answer I get is because they have a permit and you don't qualify for one. It was somewhere around trip 12 that I was told for the first time about needing improved driveways with no gravel. Page 3 of the deal. I would have thought that this should have been handed out in the first trip, not months in. I am here because the system that the mayor almost broke his arm patting himself on the back for has failed me at several turns. I came back prepared, unlike last month, to set some facts straight and offer some solutions going forward that may help prevent issues like this of mine. Page 5 is a start to maybe a cover page to someone coming in to start a project like mine that could be stapled to the driveway page when given the photo and the layout. I had a builder and an engineer. I asked before I started anything. The fact that I'm here today should speak volumes to you that maybe there is some issues that need attention. That's all I have to say this month. I'm working with the permit department. I think we now have a building that will work after much headache. But my first trip in, I actually asked what I needed to know and what I needed. And I didn't get that I needed driveways. I didn't get told that the yellow line was my line. I didn't get said if you're going to build right up to the limit, you need to have a survey. If those had been given to me, I wouldn't have been here last month, and I wouldn't be here this month. And my feelings towards the permit office and the city would be a lot better off. It failed me. It failed me miserably. And I don't know what the biggest fix could be, but maybe a question deal when I came in. I mean, there was a lot of information that I asked for. I wasn't asking the city to engineer my building. I paid that. I've already paid it, and I'm paying it again for the new building. It's cost me an extra $3-4 grand when it's all said and done for something that would have been very easily fixed at the beginning. There's a pamphlet there that you can read, and if you got any other questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Next we have, is it Stephen Edgerly? Or Stephen? 766 East Elmore Street.
I'm having an issue on my street where I've tried to contact the police many times. And every time my neighbors complain on my street that the cops don't come out to do anything. For how I've been trying to get a sign put out so to let these drivers know to stop speeding. Because I've seen them speed in the middle of the day, middle of the night, and they're doing this in the morning when they go to work. And it's real frustrating when they reckless drive and do this every day. Because I've seen the cops come out when one of my neighbors complain, and they don't even stay long enough, and they just leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've talked to the police already, though, yourself?
And I have went out to the police department, showed them video, and nothing has been done about it.
What's your location again?
Hi.
What's your location?
766 East Summer Street.
That's where it dead ends there at the apartment complex.
Yeah, because I've seen them reckless drive from the apartments on the street, and they come from the dead end as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have been in contact. In fact, I emailed you a couple times back. I don't know if you're getting those or not, but we have taken those complaints, and we do go out there as much as we can.
Yeah, and I don't want to keep bugging the police when they do that.
No, it's okay. You can always bug the police. That's what we're
Because
here
I almost got hit because the guy was coming out of because I've been seeing a young girl
Yeah.
in a Mercedes Benz.
Yeah, we're aware of that issue, and we're trying to address that the best way
Okay.
we can. So we'll try to put a stop
And
to
I
that.
really
but-
didn't know if it would help have a sign put out.
Yeah,
Because
I
I've
don't
been
know.
wanting to get a sign that tells them it's only 25.
Yeah. There's several issues that are around the city that are involving speeding, and but that's what we're doing this month. We're trying to
Okay.
address all those issues. for you.
Because they're doing like 40, they're doing like over 40 miles per hour. It's real frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It is for you guys, and it is for us too. So.
Because I saw a lady in a Silverado, I think, or a Chevrolet pickup that's black, and she does the same thing.
Yeah. We definitely are aware of that, and like I said,
Okay.
we'll try to fix that for you.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we'll finally get these drivers to slow down for us.
That's my hope too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Has the little radar thing, sign, trailer been out there?
Yeah,
Yep.
we've actually put that out there as of recently. We think we finally got our other one back and fixed and putting up at different locations. So, especially with the proclamation that was read tonight, we're assigning all kinds of different shifts for different areas of concern. So, hopefully, we'll put a strong message out there for people to slow down.
Okay. Cassie Cruz.
Cassie Cruz, your downtown Main Street manager, giving your downtown update. I just want to say, actually, first of all, thank you to Frank. I had the opportunity to speak with Officer Barnes the other night when I was coming back from doing a live video from Barcidius. I saw Sir Barnes just kind of walking along downtown, just, checking doors and whatnot. And I just said, just appreciate him being down there and the presence that we're having. And it's being seen by our merchants and other business owners. So just thank you for that. We just appreciate that. And so what's going on downtown? Are you already making my time go? Okay, thank goodness.
Done.
So it talks faster.
You'll speak so fast you won't need it.
I know, thanks. And then we had our downtown trick or treat that was held on the 26th. It was the first time that we had left the highway open. It was the first time we had moved it away from Halloween, and I'm still here, and I was not flogged. And it seemed like everyone had a really great time. The only time I think we had a bottleneck of pedestrian traffic where I would have thought it would have been a concern was when the gentleman from Willamette Gaming Company down on Sherman brought Pokemon cards out, so the kids were able to pick through them, and he was too close to the corner, so I had to move him down further so we could get pedestrian traffic going. So it was a great event, and just thank you, Jason, for having your guys out there. I worked with Russell Dufour. Drew, thank you. He was wonderful in that, and so it was a really great community event that everyone rallied around, and there wasn't parents complaint that the streets were left open. They were teaching their kids, we stop, and it was a great learning lesson for the kids, and so it was a good time. And we had our veterans, thank you to veterans, First Fridays, that went off, and that went well. And then we have our Wassel Walk that will be coming up on December 1st. And then what I'm excited about mostly about this year and next year is for 2020 is planning. The one thing I'm excited about is my committees right now are working on their plan for 2020. So promotions working on their First Fridays to get that implemented and to make it stronger than we had seen this last year. So I'm happy about that. And then we have coming up on the 7th of December is our Jingle Bell Run and Walk. And this year we are partnering up with Special Olympics. So proceeds will go out to them and, of course, to LDA to keep that event and other events going. So we are plugging away, working away. Wassel Walk's coming up, Jingle Bell Run. First Fridays will start again in the first of the year in February. So I think that's
Very excited for a Wassel Walk.
Aren't you excited?
Yeah, I didn't even know that I wanted one until you guys announced that you were having one. I'm like, I think I've always wanted that.
You have. You didn't watch the 1987 Christmas Claymation celebration that was out back in the day? I loved it as a kid, and I've been wanting a wassail since then. Watch it. It's a little creepy.
I did not watch that.
It's awesome. It
I'm a
makes me
little
happy.
younger than Cassie, so maybe I didn't catch that.
We all know Mary's the younger sister. But then also another great thing is, which I'm excited, and I will, this is kind of a little early to announce, but I'm going to do it anyways. We're working on a downtown video that is going to highlight the best of downtown. We have a gentleman whose recent production company is Perspective Productions. He's putting a video together for us, and what he's shot in the last 4 months since he started on the project is just phenomenal. I'll share it when it's done, and I don't know if he'll let me have a sneak peek to give you guys because he is still an artist. But when he showed me what he had so far, just the 4 months of what we've done as a community downtown, it honestly was moving. It was, because sometimes I think, as everyone here knows, when you're in the midst of putting an event on or something on, it's sometimes just taxing, and you only just see what's in front of you. And sometimes you forget to look at that bigger picture of what's been created. And what he has seen has definitely done that. And so I'm excited to share that with you when we have it, and good things are happening. But if you guys don't have any questions, I can leave it up for somebody else.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
I noticed the flags,
Yes,
flags
thank
were
you.
up on Veterans Day.
Yes, thank you. I forgot about that. That was devastating. So when we opened up our flags, the container they were in, water had leaked through, and the flags were the furthest to the back, and they had water on them. They were kind of algae ridden, and they were really they were dirty just from all the ceiling water that had run down on them. So they were not appropriate to put out. We salvaged what we could, and now Yvette Meyer, who's our president of the Downtown Association, she's taken all of them and she's hand washed them. And so we will have our flags back and ready to go. But yeah, thank you, Michelle, because that was devastating. Nearly almost cried because it was just, they were in such bad disarray. We thought we were going to have to get rid of them and get all new flags. And luckily she spent the entire day taking care of those for us. So they'll be back. It was just a terrible mishap. But thank you for asking. And I'm sorry I didn't bring it up. It's the ugly part of what I didn't want to have to share. Anything else? All right, I'm out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the regular session. We're going to start with a public hearing, Development Code Amendment for regulations regarding food pods. This is the time and place set for a public hearing in the matter of Development Code Amendment, regulations regarding food pods. Your patience is appreciated as our city attorney goes through the required hearing procedures.
We don't need to go through the procedures. This is just a hearing. It's not a quasi-judicial hearing.
Perfect. Well, the hearing's open at 6:17. Are we going to have to do any of the... Perfect.
Just, we could go over just what the procedures are as far as people that can comment and come up and talk about it and stuff.
Okay.
If that's on there. I didn't look at the script, I'm sorry.
After she presents, yeah.
Okay.
We'll do it. It's all you.
You good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. Before you tonight is a proposed ordinance to establish regulations for food pods. So if you all remember, back in August, we had a discussion on this new land use issue, and we provided 3 different levels of regulation that were identified, and we requested the council to choose a path, and based on that decision, we would draft an ordinance. Through that conversation, it was determined that the middle-of-the-road approach should be developed, where we would regulate public health safety issues, and then largely leave it up to the operators to determine the level of amenities and additional offers to provide. Based on this direction, we drafted the ordinance, and it was presented to the Planning Commission for recommendation at the October Planning Commission meeting. After a very robust conversation, the Commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of the ordinance, but did recommend an amendment to it to expand the zones that are authorizing food pods to include both the mixed-use zone as well as the industrial zone. So what does the ordinance regulate? If you all remember the graphic on the left of the screen of the original discussion, these are the items that were listed then in terms of seating areas, lighting, restroom facilities, parking, so on and so forth. and that's exactly what the ordinance regulates too. So first and foremost, a food pod would be defined as the operation of 2 food preparation units on a single property. This was defined to still allow the single food truck operators to occur under the existing permitting system of the temporary use permit, while providing the regulations for the larger operations for the food pods under a separate ordinance and separate regulations. For food pods themselves, they're proposed to be permitted in the central business commercial district as well as the highway commercial district, subject to the administrative review. And at the recommendation of the Planning Commission, the zones were expanded to the mixed use and the industrial zones. However, to maintain consistency in the land use categorizations that exist currently within the code, for those 2 updated zones, it would be subject to a conditional use permit in terms of the same operational characteristics. In terms of regulations, they are based on the basic parameters to provide appropriate path of travel for ADA purposes. Require the transaction between the food truck and the patron to occur interior within the property itself rather than onto the public right-of-way. And appropriate waste receptacles for patrons and the business as well.
Ellie, can I ask you about that real quick? In our packet, it says that the trash receptacles will be hidden or something. What does it say?
So there's
screen from view.
Yeah, so there's requirements for you can't have the operational stuff, the trash receptacles, the extra propane containers, or the generators or anything like that. That should not be in view from the public right of way. So it's basic aesthetic qualifications. So it doesn't have to be screened from view within the interior, but just from the street right-of-way view, you shouldn't be able to see where the trash is being held. And that would be obscured with either a fence or shrubs or something.
Okay, I thought when I read it, I was thinking the where I would put my food when I'm done, when my trash receptacle.
Right.
But that
can be in view within the interior of the food pot itself.
Okay.
But the receptacles
for the main bin. Okay.
Yeah. So now moving on, if a food truck pod wanted to provide on-site amenities such as seating areas, this would be permitted and of course encouraged. But it would also trigger the provisions of providing restroom options either on-site or within close proximity to the food pod for use by the patrons. This restroom requirement is only triggered if a seating area is provided, and it's triggered because the business is now providing the opportunity and encouraging their patrons to stay on site for longer periods of time, which means you should be providing those facilities associated with a regular restaurant sit-down service situation. The code is drafted to say you must either provide it on site or within a very close proximity. It's about 200 feet based off of the mileage transition, which pretty much means you're within an adjacent property or close to adjacent property where you would be required to provide those. But the restroom requirement is, again, only triggered if you're providing that amenity. When we were drafting up the code regulations for this, we sort of surveyed a bunch of other cities that had regulations for food pods. This was a very standard way to handle the restroom facilities. So we're within line with everybody else, and we're not considering a regulation above what the other cities are providing. And it falls within that mid-level where you're not providing the Cadillac service, where you're starting to do full-service buildings and that kind of thing. The way that it's drafted, it doesn't stop the operators from having the full-service facilities, but it at least sets the minimum standard where if you're going to provide that service to the patrons, you should provide the additional services.
Does that need to be ADA accessible?
Yes. Okay. If you provide any restrooms on site, they must be ADA accessible. At least one of the facilities must be ADA accessible.
I have a question as well. So could they, if they chose not to have seating, but you had tall tables and then you stood to eat, is that like separate, that they could do that and not have to provide?
So it is identified as seating specific to the code. If you're just providing stand-up tables, that's still a movability of the patrons. It doesn't provide a comfortable situation where somebody's going to want to stand for 3 hours and hang out. So that's more of a transitional for that opportunity. The seating is where you're providing them the opportunity to function, to stay, and to be there. So that's how it's tied together, and that was the easiest way to identify it, and it was consistent with what other cities were doing as well.
So, Kelly, question?
Yes.
So if you have a pod population of, let's say, 8 pods, and 4 of them have seating capacity for their patrons, does each one have to provide that, or is one sufficient for the population of pods?
So you have a singular food pod, and within the food pod you can have 8 trucks. But you just have to provide one restroom facility for the pod.
Okay.
Now, if there's a property with a food pod and then 2 properties down that's outside of the walking distance, operates another food pod, well, that food pod would then be subject to providing the restroom facilities as well.
Thank you.
But the individual trucks are not subject to that. It's
Right.
the site itself. And so this was actually a robust conversation that occurred during the Planning Commission meeting as well. There was a discussion about whether or not restrooms should just be an outright requirement for any operation of food pods. There was a motion through the Planning Commission to make that a requirement, but it was not a motion that passed. And so the reasoning for not passing the motion was because it was the understanding of the desire to operate at that mid-level and not make it an over-regulatory action. So that occurred at the Planning Commission. Moving on further, for utilities, under the current permitting system, the only utility that they can connect to is electrical. Now, under this permitting system, they'd be able to do full connection of utilities. For parking, if a pod were to initiate operations in a zone that currently requires parking, then it would be 2 parking spaces per food truck within the pod. And so you're going to design the pod and identify the maximum number of spaces that the trucks would be able to operate within, and then you would do 2 times that maximum number of spaces. However, full caveat, in the central business district, the downtown zone, there is no parking requirements, and that happens to be the location that both of the proposed operators currently want to operate in. And so the 2 food pod locations currently would not be subject to requirements. Finally, for lighting, there is a requirement that says appropriate lighting must be provided in times of darkness to provide appropriate safe path of travel along the required pathways. So the regulations we just discussed are the basic crux of the proposed ordinance. There is also a minor amendment proposed in regards to the single food truck operators. It's currently approved under a temporary use permit. That temporary use permit is valid for 6 months for food truck operators. We would like to extend that to a full year to be more consistent with fire code inspections and health code inspections. There's really no purpose for the 6 months. So that is what's also being proposed. And so with that, the recommended action tonight is to evaluate the proposed code, any public testimony, and then determine whether the ordinance is drafted or with amendments. And I can answer any questions you might have.
The single units that are operating by themselves, are they required to at least keep things also looking as far as that aesthetic of keeping it within their area, as far as the roughage and all that?
They're not as defined as the food truck pod regulations would be, but there are general regulations within the temporary use permit that would require them to keep their area cleaned up and that kind of thing. It doesn't have requirements for them to screen their equipment like they have the tanks and the storage areas, because by nature they're supposed to be temporary. So by requiring them to have additional screening, that makes it semi-permanent. So that's not included in the code, but general cleanliness of the area, picking up after themselves, is a requirement as part of that permit.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah, one more, Kelly. Within the pod, and there are a number of trucks. And say they have to camouflage their dumpster, let's say. Does there only need to be one of those with one camouflaged, or
So the number of dumpsters would generally fall under building code of how much you need to provide. Our municipal code says that for commercial areas you need to have a dumpster area for the joint use. And so it would be dependent on the size of the operation. Generally speaking, you're probably going to have one collective area that they would take they would collect it in, and that needs to be screened.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this issue? Anybody who is opposed to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 6:30 p.m. All further discussion will be limited to City Council and City staff at this time. Does Council have any additional discussion?
I think it's a good, happy medium road.
I agree. Thanks for taking all of our comments and distilling them into something that appears to work. It looks like it's going to work well. I'm excited. So
I think it's a great start for us and a good jumping off point.
Mm-hmm. Was there any input from at the Planning Commission? Did any of the players that are looking to, nobody participated, and you haven't heard from them with any input?
We had, prior to kicking off the ordinance discussion, we held a development review team meeting with one of the players. We saw their proposed plan. Luckily, it was within a general conformance of what most everybody else is doing in terms of what realistically was going to be operated as. And so this should fit within that happy medium.
Your sense is this will work for them?
This should work. It is, I'm not going to take full credit because a lot of it is just taken from a bunch of other cities that have already done the work and already had the operations in place. So we're not recreating the wheel, we're just taking rules that other people have already established. And so that's where I say it's consistent. And if we need to in the future make tweaks based off of proposals in the future, we can always make tweaks, but this is at least a consistent start.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, we'll have the city attorney read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill number 2019-13, ordinance number 2936, a bill for an ordinance amending the City of Lebanon Development Code regarding regulation of food pods.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance for food pods. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We'll come back in a regular session, and agenda item number 2, expand Pioneer School Reeves Parkway School Speed Zone, presented by Ron Whitlatch.
Thank you, Councilor Bullen, City Council. What we have before you tonight is a resolution to expand the existing Pioneer School Speed Zone, basically to encompass Reeves Parkway at the intersection of 5th Street. Give you a little background. Over the last year, we've kind of ran some traffic analysis with our tube counters, checked the speeds out there, what was happening. You can see what in the memo there that average 85th percentile was between 39 and 46 miles per hour and a 40 mile an hour posted speed limit, which is pretty typical of a roadway like that. So it tells us that the speeds it's signed correctly. Our police department's been out there numerous times, making a lot of contact with local businesses to inform them of the complaints that we're receiving from motorists traveling up and down the road at a perceived speeding rate. Don't get me wrong, there are some that we found that were speeding, but it wasn't a lot. So we looked at that. We started getting some more complaints this fall up at that intersection about crossing. So we began to look at different ways that we could alleviate that without putting up a bunch of signs, which we did put some signs up, or changing the speed limit when it's actually signed properly, in my opinion. So what we looked at was a school speed zone adjustment. So we can take, as the local jurisdiction, we're the road authority for that road, we can do an engineer study, and really all the engineering study is for is to justify to have some kind of justification as to why we're making the change. So what that includes was pedestrian counts, of course the speed counts and the speed study. There's several other things that go into it, and is the local school district on board with it? We didn't receive any comment back on the letter I sent regarding making this a school zone. However, they did, and it's attached, they did create a new bus stop at this intersection for these kids at Pioneer School because of the unsafe crossing. So in my mind, they agree with what we're doing here. So all the criteria that we studied and looked at, there's two that really stuck out to us, and that is the number of pedestrians crossing. There's 20 kids now, according to the school district, that cross and use that intersection on a daily basis, and the speeds at 40 miles per hour, and people are pushing that to 46 or whatever they're doing. It's dark out. So in our opinion, we're maybe a little bit ahead of the game, but as development continues to happen up there, there's going to be more and more and more. This is very similar to what's out on Oak Street. It's not adjacent to the school, but it's a school crossing for these kids. So, and what our recommendation is to have council pass the resolution, and we'll implement a new school zone. I can answer any questions.
Great, I have a question.
Okay.
So what kind of school zone are you looking at? Are you doing the 7 to 5 or just when kids are present?
I believe in this case we have to do the 7 to 5. Well, it's actually going to be when
This
flashing.
flashing light.
It'll be when this is flashing. There's two different types. 7 to 5 is if you don't have the flashing light. This will be when flashing, so it'll be programmed like all of our others. Basically, it won't flash when we've got holidays. It won't flash when we've got, after hours. And it'll likely be till, I think the ones on Oak Street go till 4, if I remember right. Maybe 5.
Do they flash all day?
Yeah.
I didn't think they did.
Yes, they do.
Then they stop at a certain point.
In between school time, no. They flash the entire time. But they stop at a certain point during the day, and they don't start. Right. Yeah. So there's a couple ways to do that, but this we looked at seemed to be the best. You could just sign it. You can either have when flashing or with children present. I was hesitant to put it when children are just present because that could be at any point, any time, and we're really trying to fix the school problem.
I know there are medical students too that also live in those apartment complexes and walk across. Granted, they're much larger than small children, but I think as development continues up in that area, it's important to have some signage there.
And this signage, you can see what the signage will be, what it'll look like, what our proposed signage plan will look like. This follows MUTCD. So that's what that will look like. It will definitely get people's attention. The other option in this case would be to put a pedestrian crossing button in there. There's some issues with that. One, we've got a turn lane, so we have to probably remove the turning movement to some because you can't have that conflict. You end up building a pedestrian island out there. So that's why we came up with the school zone. As opposed to something similar that's out in front of the hospital or in other places that we're doing this.
I love those.
They're good. They work really well. But when you've got 20 school kids crossing, this may be a better approach just to get motorists to slow down.
Yeah, because we could always go to that approach if it wasn't.
Absolutely.
As that area develops into more students.
And it's likely at some point that this intersection could even see a traffic signal at some point, or may be controlled at an all-way stop.
On a kind of related but different note, this corner right here on the highway and Reeves is dark. I've received complaints about it being dark, and I'm like, I haven't even gone out there to look to see is that our issue?
We could probably get street lighting out there. It would typically fall under state jurisdiction, but we can.
It is dark.
Is it dark? Okay.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of pedestrian traffic more and more in that area, and I think.
And that is an
intersection
intersection that will be signalized. at some point. And in fact, as much as this is growing out there, probably the next few developments will see a traffic impact analysis that will probably trigger that at some point real quick.
Yeah. So. Well, I think the flashing light actually works quite well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that because it's worked well on Oak Street.
Yeah, it has.
And you get some that'll violate it, but for the most part, they slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got a presumed cost in here. I was hoping to have some quotes back, but I haven't gotten them from them. I'm guessing somewhere to do this, I think somewhere between $12,000 and $16,000 to do this. We have that in some street funds that we can skip doing another small little project and do this for this year.
Is the school district part of that Safe Routes to School program?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that program helps offset some of these costs.
You got to apply for the grant. And we could apply for the grant too. We missed this cycle, so that is something that you could do, is hold off and apply for it. But
yeah, we have
this
the issue now.
came together pretty quick. So
there's only, refresh my memory, there's a crosswalk on the west side of Reeves Parkway, but not a set of painted lines on the east side. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Would we include another route there, or just keep the one crosswalk on the west side?
My preference is to keep the one on the west side and
Okay.
just have one. You've got too many turning movements there. That's the least likely spot to not be seen from all the turning movements. If you put one on the other side, it's a big, wide intersection, and I think if we can keep people fairly focused on that, then it probably helps a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? And we'll have the city attorney read the resolution.
I was reading ahead. Resolution number 2019-29. Resolution to expand Pioneer School speed zone onto Reeves Parkway in the vicinity of 5th Street.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2019-29. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And number 3, amending Lebanon Municipal Code, Chapter 2.24 regarding Planning Commission quorum rules, presented by Kelly Hart.
Hello again.
Hello.
So, before you tonight is a proposed amendment of Chapter 2.24 of the Municipal Code regarding the Planning Commission membership and operation regulations. The last time the code was updated was in 2010. And then during our last recruitment, where we were attempting to bring on more planning commissioners, we were taking a deeper dive look at the code and realized that there's probably some things that we should update. And so a number of the sections within the chapter are proposed to be amended. A general overview includes, in terms of membership, we are proposing to amend the ordinance to have the membership have it as a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 9. Right now we have it as a set of 7 regular planning commissioners and 2 alternates. During this last cycle, and from my understanding of previous cycles, it's been somewhat difficult for us to get some applicants sometimes. And so by dropping it to the ability to have 5 regular commissioners and the remainder of them as alternates, that gives us the ability to, in some slow times, be able to have that 5, but then we can also bring it up to the 7 commissioners as we previously have had. So it just provides the flexibility. When we have a large pool of applicants, we can amend the number of people. When we have a small one, we can drop it down to the minimum to be able to operate. So that's proposal number 1. In regards to language for alternate commissioner roles and responsibilities, this has been clarified that they can participate in every meeting. To allow for either a quorum or for temporary vacancies or just to participate. The practice has been that if you're an alternate, you can come and participate to at every meeting. However, the code actually says the only time that you can participate is if you're actually filling a void or a vacancy or to create that quorum. It's identified within the code that says that the purpose of alternates are for us to garner future full-time commissioners, and so by only letting them participate in one meeting every once in a while, it sort of negates that process. So the new code language would allow them to participate under any circumstance. Next, the ordinance modifies the quorum rules to have it just based off of the majority of appointed regular members rather than identifying the number of commissioners. Right now it identifies the number, which creates sometimes some difficulties for us, and since we're allowing for the flexibility of the members, putting it as a simple majority is the ability to create that flexibility for the quorum. Next up, language was modified regarding regular meetings and conducting special meetings, and this was just a code cleanup to reflect the Oregon public meeting laws. And finally, there was a section that was added to define conflict of interest and the actions to be taken by commissioners when there is a conflict of interest. So that summarizes the amendments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Those are nice changes.
Yeah.
Any discussion amongst council? All right, I'll have the city attorney read the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill number 2019-12, ordinance number 2935, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 2.24 of the Lebanon Municipal Code concerning Planning Commission membership and operation.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance bill number 2019-12, ordinance 2935. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kelly. Number 4, amending Lebanon Municipal Code, Chapter 2.20.050 regarding library committee membership, presented by Kim Schaefer.
This is some cleanup language, so it actually reflects how the committee is set up. It was reviewed and approved by the library committee. Currently, there's a friends of the library member that's on the committee, but it wasn't stipulated in the code. So it's just some wording cleanup. They also added that voting members must reside within the Lebanon zip code.
Thank you. Any discussion? We'll have the city attorney read the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill number 2019-14, ordinance number 2937. A, bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 2.20.050 of the Lebanon Municipal Code concerning library committee membership.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance bill 2019-14, ordinance number 2937. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Presentation on economic development catalyst position. Alicia Rogers.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No. No?
Yes.
Speak up.
So I'm going to be updating you on economic development and what we've been doing for that here in Lebanon. First off, the downtown building restoration program, which is the $50,000 from the transient lodging tax, the hotel tax, towards building improvement, facade improvement in the downtown area. There was 4 different projects last year: the Tremmels building, the Kuhn Theater Marquee, the Stainthorpe's building on the corner of Main and Grant is still under construction. They have been met with a lot of seismic issues that they weren't anticipating, but they're still progressing. And then Serendipity Cafe and Tea. For the 2019-2020 budget cycle, we had 8 different applicants within the first 9 days asking for $51,000 of the $50,000 available. So very interested this year. The projects are the Weatherford building. They're going to remove their awnings and restore 210 transom window panes that are underneath that awning. Awesome. And repair the building. The Courtney Block building also received $20,000 from the state for the Diamonds in the Rough grant. And they've restored their upstairs windows, those 4 up top, and their next step is working on the transom windows down below in their storefronts. The Oddfellows building got a new coat of paint and their awnings cleaned. Currently, Sugar Vibes is going to be moving their sign a little bit over and adding the sign for the cellar. They're going to be starting their next endeavor, doing an evening venture of craft cocktails and appetizers. Really excited for that. The Bachmeyer Garland building, they're going to be repairing their rotten, older style transom window that's above their entrance that used to be to the Elks Lodge. So you see the historic picture there. They'll also be repairing their stucco and painting as well. The Finally Together Quilt Shop is our first side street project that we helped fund, and this was a new coat of paint plus adding the quilt patches and the new sign to their building. The MBVA building, they added a new brick facade painted sign, carpet, and a smaller sign outside as well. And then Conversion Brewing is going to be removing their awning and the wood facade that is in front of the original Fisher Feed sign that is still on their building today.
Wow. Nice.
Because of this, the partnership with the Downtown Association to do the Downtown Building Restoration Program, the City of Lebanon was awarded for Outstanding Partner of the Year for the State of Oregon for the Oregon Main Street Association. This is one of 4 awards that the Lebanon Downtown Association received, but this one in particular was recognizing the City of Lebanon for their support in the Downtown Building Restoration Program and for funding for the Main Street Manager position and the partnership that we've had going forward. Through the Downtown Building Restoration Program, last year we saw about $80,000 from the business owners in the downtown for the 4 projects. This was mostly Stainthorpe's because of the seismic issues I was mentioning earlier. And then for the 2019-2020, we helped fund over 8 projects, and about $39,000 was infused from business and building owners to the downtown. Moving away from the downtown, other things that we've been focusing on for economic development, of course, is the wetlands issues with our industrial sites. A few months ago, the Eco Northwest came and presented about the viable options that we have. We're going to continue working with the Cascade West Regional Consortium to advocate on the state level through the 404 assumption, and also still pushing for a publicly owned mitigation bank. The other option that Eco Northwest mentioned was the RISIS program, which is the Regionally Significant Industrial Sites. Basically, this is a reimbursement program. So if a development came in, they need to create 25 jobs that pay 150% of the median household income for the county. If it meets that, then the city would be reimbursed 50% of the income tax for each of those employees per year until they're reimbursed for the amount they put in for public infrastructure improvements to the site.
Exactly.
I think I counted like 5 hoops.
That does include wetland mitigation in addition to any utilities or improvements to the land that the city puts in for. So long-term solution there, but we're still looking at what sites could potentially be designated as a RISIS site. And that was through Business Oregon's program. The Lynn Benton Collaborative, you'll hear a little bit more after my presentation from Scott for the IGA, the Intergovernmental Agreement. But the 8 rural cities that came together for the ROI grant for Business Oregon to help create the entrepreneurial ecosystem through RAIN are working on other economic development initiatives and strategies. Big focus is going to be the collective voice and having the ability to advocate on the county and state level. Bringing those rural, smaller cities together will help with that voice. And I'll let Scott talk more about that later. When it comes to business retention and expansion, the Community Development Director and I have been doing a weekly business visitation program. And we're doing this to kind of learn more about the different businesses and sectors that we have here in Lebanon and help identify what we could be missing, figure out the health of those businesses. If they're struggling, making sure we can connect them to the right resources. If they're thriving and they are needing to look to expand, we can help them with those options as well. And then also that helps us to determine if there's any complementary businesses that might help us to hone in on what we should be recruiting for as well. So we visited businesses like Western University, Oregon State Federal Credit Union. We've visited Rick Franklin Railroad, American Family Insurance, and recently the Keller Williams Laura Gillott Home Team. And then transitioning to business recruitment, we have been looking into doing a business recruitment packet. And these pictures are a couple examples of another recruitment packet that we're looking at as a model. And the goals for this is basically to showcase the attractive demographics to Lebanon here, highlight our regional connectedness to Albany, Corvallis, I-5, how close we are to those and access there, and as of course railroad as well. This will help us explain the competitive advantage and showcase why it is easier here and why you should come to Lebanon. And then potentially include potential retail developments as well, and kind of showcase what our vacant sites could look like. And this would be available on our website, through social media platforms. We would share it with local and regional real estate agents through Business Oregon. They're our state recruiter. And then also if there's any businesses that are looking to Lebanon, we can share this packet with them as well. And then a brief update on 2040 goals that we've been focusing on. The first is develop a downtown design standard that's consistent with the historic architecture themes. I've been working with the Lebanon Downtown Association and the Design Committee to work on this. And then also toying around with what the ideas would look like for incentive and, or on the other hand of that, penalty of what that would look like for building owners in the downtown area, which is our historic area. Secondly, develop and implement a downtown residential incentive plan. The community development director has already started to look at this to kind of remove a barrier of review when it comes to downtown residential. Currently, it's an administrative review, but if that is to be removed, then it's something that a building owner can develop residential if they wanted to downtown without it being approved. And then also toying around with the idea of making that part of the downtown building restoration program, if there can be some sort of incentive or money that comes from that grant program to help develop downtown residential as well. And then lastly, develop a residential redevelopment plan to address areas of blight. This is a conversation that we've had with multiple groups, including the Lorgelot Home Team, because they have a red day where they clean up a specific home that has been nominated. The Downtown Association does the Community Pride Day. And just if we can expand that and create a committee around maybe adopting a neighborhood or adopting a block and doing larger community cleanup days, working with the Be Undivided group and making it more of a community effort to target specific areas of blight. So that's what we've been working on with economic development. Are there any questions?
That was it. Very nice.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know I asked for that to kind of start happening a couple months ago, and that's exactly the kind of bullet point stuff that we need to hear and understand what you guys are doing. And if we don't know about it, it's just happening behind the scenes, and it needs to be out there. So you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 6, the Mid-Valley Partnership IGA, presented by Kelly Hart, Community Development Director.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce that one.
Presented by Alicia Rogers.
Just move over so Scott can join
Development
me up here.
Catalyst.
Use a highlighter or laser pointer at all. Yeah. Hello again. So before you in your packets is a proposed intergovernmental agreement between the 8 rural cities in Lynn and Benton counties. The group has gained a lot of momentum after the Business Oregon ROI grant that funded the RAIN project. This IGA is the next step in the process. So here to give further information about how we got here, what this means, and the next steps in the process is Scott McDowell, the city administrator for Brownsville, one of the 8 rural cities that's involved.
The guy who drove the shortest straw. That's who it is. Councilor President Bolin, thank you, council members, staff, for the opportunity to come speak to you tonight about this very exciting intergovernmental agreement. What I thought I would do was to give a little bit of history on how we got here to this intergovernmental agreement, kind of the origination story, the backstory, and then what we hope to gain moving forward with this partnership. So, as Helen Keller said, we can do so much more together. And as Henry Ford said, together is success. You just saw an amazing presentation by Alicia and Kelly on what they're doing. We love that about Lebanon. It's amazing to see, even in tough economic times, how Lebanon has thrived over the years, and that has helped Lynn County and actually the state of Oregon too. So the roots of where this started, it's hard to do this sitting down. The roots of where this started was Ford Family Foundation, and I think some of you might have been involved with the cohorts. Ford Family Foundation said, we really want to get into rural Oregon. That's our mission. That's our heart. We really want to say, how do we get rural folks? What tools can we put in their hands to help them build for their future, build their communities? So they created this wheel, and they taught 5 cohorts in Lynn County, including Lebanon, Sweet Home, Brownsville, Halsey. And in those cohort classes, there were about 12 to 40 people in those cohort classes. And that all culminated into a project. And then what happened was everybody got together. They had a big meeting out at Boulder Falls, and they formed what was called the Go Team. And this has been a number of years ago. This is a labor of love for me. I've been on this thing for a long time. So the Go Team formed. We said, okay, what can move the needle? What's something that really is germane to Lynn County that we don't have now that could really push us forward? And so after talking for about 3 months, we said, you know what? Regional economic development efforts. So to that end, the Go Team went forth. We put together what was known as the Rural Lynn Economic Development Plan. We felt that was the best path forward. We met again at Boulder Falls. We invited Representative Sherry Springer, Will Tucker from the Commissioner's Office, Roger Nyquist, the chair, came out and spoke. We had about 70 folks. Everybody was excited. We had some good momentum. Then we stalled, right? A little bit of a transition. But as that stalled, opportunity kind of drove into the neighborhood. Business Oregon was kind of doing the same thing in the 17 through 19 biennium. They were looking at capacity, rural capacity, entrepreneurship. And so the partners got together because we were not going to stay not together. And so the city of Lebanon, Harrisburg, Sweet Home, and Brownsville and Halsey got together here in 1847. I'm now the elder statesman in the area, if you can believe that. 13 years is the longest tenured. So I got everyone together and we said, hey, we got excited about that rural Lynn, partnering and what that would mean for all of us. Then opportunity knocked on the actual door, and as Kelly reported, RAIN, we cited that 3-year agreement, year to begin with, that really captured the rural entrepreneurship. So we knew that was a piece of what we really wanted to go for in a broader piece. So this really cool grassroots handshake deal, community partners being neighbors, it's really working good. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, other things were happening. So because of the RLED proposal and because of the interest generated by that, there was a meeting held at Lynn Benton Community College where we got Oregon State University involved, the University of Oregon involved, the Council of Governments, Business Oregon was there, and then for the first time, Lebanon was there, of course. The smaller communities were invited to the table, what I like to call the stepchildren of the county. And we were excited to be there. We had 2 meetings. And any time, as you might know, that you get academics together, they want to study it. So that's what they did. So to that end, we hired Echo Northwest. And John Topogna, who's the president, puts together some information for our area and for our region. And then Bob Parker, who's the executive director for the Institute of Policy Research and Engagement, had some graduate students go into Lane County and Lynn County and talk to captains of industry and business and kind of get their perceptions. So what John's study found out is basically there were 3 things working together. What could we do together? What could we do collectively? 3 categories: foundational, aspirational, and mitigation. Foundational was, hey, look, we could really build out the Oregon Prospector site, get that really working. We could have a point where we get them to a software, whether that's an actual software or a website. We could do other things in terms of strategic visioning together. One thing that had happened at the time was Biz Oregon was saying, hey, I had a 500 employee industry show up in Eugene. They came in on Wednesday. The meeting went south. They weren't interested in Eugene. And Biz Oregon was like, okay, hold on. Before you leave, I would like you to look at Corvallis or whatever. You know, if we would have had our ducks in a row in that scenario, our communities also could have been looked at. So that foundational point is important. Aspirationally, what we can do together is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Golden Triangle in North Carolina, but similar to that, we have the same conditions here in Oregon with that Golden Triangle. It's in North Carolina because we have Oregon State University and the University of Oregon, also LBCC, but the two aforementioned schools have great research. They have folks that are coming out there with a product line, with traded sector things ready to go, and what continues to happen, and it's always going to happen, let's not be naive, they're going to Colorado, they're going to Utah, in some cases they're going to South Carolina. How do we capture that talent? And to that end, that was really what we went for, the Rural Opportunities Initiative, because at the time the City of Lebanon was looking at maybe we could do some kind of incubator in one of our downtown businesses. So anyway, that would give us opportunities to capture that local talent. Mitigation efforts, really this revolves around advocacy. The state legislature, of course, continues to impede the constitutional right of cities to home rule. And how does that look on a federal and state scale? And how do we bind together to make changes? We've done that on a side note. We've done that already. We started that in the long session through the Cascade West Council of Governments. We took 6 points and we had some success there, so we were excited about that. We feel this is a piece of that too, which will help us move those forward. Mr. Parker then took over and he said, look, my categories, there was 5 broad categories. I'll highlight a few. Economic development activities lacking coordination. So this framework that you have in front of us does that. Interviewees perceive local efforts positively. 2 thumbs up for that. And then the 4th thing there is the environmental regulation is perceived as a threat when you start talking about 404 wetlands and assumption and all of those things. And, you know, people's eyes glaze over, kind of like yours right now as I keep talking about this. So he said, look, he supported himself with stats. He said, look, we feel that the coordination efforts lacking. And the respondents said, hey, we need strong leadership from the local level, and we need better coordination with the state agencies. The good news through all of this grassroots effort is Biz Oregon is championing this. I mean, they're really excited. And we recently won an award from the Cascades West Council of Governments with our effort through RAIN. So one of the gurus of management, I think, of all time is Peter Drucker. He said, you know, you have a plan when you have clear objectives, skilled individuals assigned to achieve them, and adequate financial resources. Until then, you have good intentions. So what we're bringing tonight with this framework is we're basically solidifying our grassroots effort. And we feel that the collective impact conditions that were highlighted in the Ford Family Foundation are really articulated well in the deliverables that you have in front of you. Of course, we have a common agenda. We have a continuous communication stream. And we want the cities to come together to be that influential champion over the next 3 years to really move this forward. From a budgetary standpoint, that's one of the questions I've got at a couple of the council meetings I've been at. Basically, what we're asking the councils to do is just to continue. We've got a lot of great in-kind help from Alicia and Kelly, and before that, Wendell Lukowski. You know, as we put this together, it was vetted by everybody. It went through the commissioner's office. It went through Larry Mullins. It went through, of course, we've been working with John Morgan in this latest iteration, but he was in on the ground floor when we put the team together. So budgetarily, basically, to get back to that point, what we're really asking for is whatever you have already budgeted, what we would like to do over the next few months as we round out to March and April into budget season is get some of those deliverables, get some actual numbers for councils, not only Lebanon Council, but the partner cities councils, to take a look at what those things are going to cost and then what our cost share is for those particular items. So with that, I'd like to say again, I don't even know I had that. I'd like to say thank you again for having me here. We're really excited about this process, and I'm willing to field any questions anyone may have.
Yeah, Scott, I'm fired up.
All right, good.
Got me going. All right.
All it takes is money.
Wayne, get the checkbook out.
Yeah.
Any questions?
What do we have budgeted for this? Someone was going to ask. Oh, sorry.
We have nothing budgeted for this. So each year, based on the agreement, we would allocate what we think should be budgeted to it. There's no set allocation to this.
And that could also be in-kind work and the use of.
It could, but I mean, there's going to be some true hard costs that'll have to come up. You could allocate $5, or you could allocate whatever. I think that's a proposal that staff would hit the budget committee with, and that's we talked about that today, was anything like this would come to the budget committee body first for approval before we went forward.
Could that come out of the motel taxes?
Very possibly so, yeah. I got to confirm that with Matt, but I don't know why I couldn't.
You don't need to confirm anything with Matt.
Just do it?
Just do it.
Got it.
And
I'm
if
sick
I
of
can,
Matt being in charge of that.
if I can say something about that too, we are going to try and pursue grants primarily for the funding there. The ROI grant, we have confirmed that the next round of it, they have $750,000 allotted towards the ROI grant, and our next step in the process is something that lines up with the grant outline, and so that will be applied for primarily, and that's the initial funding. Where we want to try and get the funding from is grants first.
And I do want to say, to that point, thank you for reminding me, I did forget that. We've become a little bit of the darlings of Oregon on this framework that we put together in the cooperation. I mean, the state of Oregon is gushing over this. They're talking about it to other rural areas in the state. So I think that once we solidify this agreement, this will be a model, and I agree, and I've told other councils that too. We're going to try for grant funding first, especially, parlaying the excitement that we have around this partnership is dynamic, and funding organizations love regionalization and partnerships. So we're hitting those.
I like how you called yourself a darling right there.
Well, we are darling.
I have to imagine that that it will look good. Your position will look good on a grant, because even if you had a regional group, if we're committing a full-time employee to this kind of project, then that's got to bode well for getting a grant.
And we also have Sweet Home. They have an economic development director who's also been a part of it. So it's great. I mean, that's what, that's what's making
So what's the window of opportunity for the grant writing and then initial funding if we're lucky?
Yeah, the grant will become available beginning of December, and we'll find out in January. So we'll find out before budget.
Good. Cool.
Excellent.
Good. It's awesome. I think it's just great, all the small communities coming together. Gets me all warm and fuzzy inside.
All right. We'll ask the city attorney to read the title of the resolution.
I'll do it in a warm and fuzzy manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2019-30, a resolution authorizing participation in an intergovernmental agreement with cities within Lynn and Benton counties for the purpose of pursuing an economic development partnership.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 2019-30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. City managers' reports.
Good job.
Thank you, guys.
Very much.
That was awesome.
All right. I'm not going to go through stuff that's on the report unless anybody's got any questions. Well, Rebecca, you wanted me to go through some of this?
Oh, yeah, I wanted you to read the report to us,
well,
please.
all right. It's going to take a while, but I can do it. Things are moving forward real well, just so you're aware. Things are going well. I will bring up a couple of recruitments that we've got. We've got a library recruitment that they just wrapped up for somebody who resigned. One of probably the biggest one is Captain Burrows is actually going to retire, and so Frank's out on recruitment for that. So that's moving forward. So hopefully get somebody February-ish maybe. Hope to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did it internal or external?
External.
Okay. So with that, unless you've got any questions about anything else.
How's the links? I'm seeing it all over the place in town.
I've talked to Kendra about that. I think she's doing well. They had some bumps to work out at first, like how far to go out, and we built some maps and stuff. But I think it's actually doing really well.
It really is very visible.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Yep. And I think she's got quite a few riders too. So.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Any additional items from council? We'll do one last term for public comments. Anyone like to address council from the public? Seeing none. Any items from press? No. Our next scheduled meeting is December 11th at 6 p.m. right here. Be there, be square. We're adjourned.